So another important feature of the digital markets has been a renewed look at the role that intermediaries play in such markets. Now, intermediaries have always been historically very important, and the reason is quite simple. So most products and services that you can think of, they are typically not sold directly from producer to the final consumer, but passed through intermediaries, right? And intermediaries play at least four major roles in operations of markets, right? So in some cases, intermediaries play the role of a dealer in the sense that they buy goods and services from suppliers and resell them to buyers. They may also play the role of platform operators. So the idea is very simple. The intermediary is going to provide a platform where you have got buyers and sellers, or in general, any group of agents with complementary businesses are able to interact. The third role that they play is that they act as information gatekeepers. So they are known as intermediaries in this role. And they basically allow consumers to access and process more efficiently information about prices or the different products and services that are available on the platform, for example, right? And finally, the intermediaries can also play the role of a trusted third party in the sense that they act as a certifying agent by revealing information about a product's or a seller's reliability or quality, right? So in this context, they basically, if you think about it, you might have heard of the term that markets are basically have invisible hands, right? So basically, they somehow manage to coordinate activities. So in that sense, intermediaries are basically the visible hands in the functioning of the markets, right? And in the rise of this digital era, this role of the intermediaries have become more and more important, especially their importance in the last few roles, right? So as an example, let's think about one major operating entity in these digital markets, which is Amazon. And in fact, if you think about it, Amazon actually performs all four roles, right? So Amazon's initial business model in the US, where they acted as a pioneer of the e-commerce, was basically in the second-hand markets, right? So they would kind of like go and buy books from sellers, right, who were interested in selling books, and then they would act as an intermediary and sell those books to different consumers, right? So that was Amazon's initial business model. So they started out in second-hand markets, but they also were eventually active in the books for new market for new books as well, right? In India, though, they are more known as a platform operator, right? So they created this Amazon marketplace where you can see, if you go to amazon.in, for example, you'll see that different sellers are selling through this market, and different customers can also participate in this market and buy products from different sellers in this market, right? So in this role, Amazon is basically acting as a platform operator. They also act as an information gatekeeper or an intermediary in the sense that in the same platform, you can basically have users reviewing and rating products online. And this information is also available to all different buyers that come in. So when you go to Amazon, you can also get to read reviews of different books, items, and so on, right? Electronic items, and you can see what the user's experience have been. They also act as a certifying agent in the sense that when you are thinking of buying from a particular seller, if you don't know that seller, then you might have reasons to kind of like think about, okay, do I really want to give money to this seller? What happens if the product turns out to be defective and so on, right? So Amazon basically maintains this reputation system, right? So you can see the seller's ratings, for example, and the past record, right? And that perhaps enables you to kind of like trust the seller more. And so Amazon also performs this role, right? So all these four roles that we talked about in the intermediary case, we see that Amazon is actually performing. And we can see that these three particularly, they're performing, the digital component is a very important aspect of what they do, right? So as I mentioned, Amazon.com, which was the US version of Amazon.in, they initially started their business by buying books from publishers and reselling them to consumers, right? So one question is like, why did they need Amazon in the first place? Why wasn't it the case that you had publishers and readers directly trading with each other instead of using such intermediaries, right? So the reason why you would prefer to kind of like trade with intermediaries, because it actually helps to improve the matching opportunities, right? In the sense that it helps that, if you're looking for a particular book, rather than you going around and looking for different places, calling up different people, it helps that Amazon is kind of like doing the job of finding out what are the different products that are available for sale. and then making that option available to you in a single place, and then you can see that what are your interests, right? Similarly, from the seller's perspective, if they were interested in selling books to different people, they would have actually had to go and figure out where the demand is coming from, right? Right now, they don't have to do it because Amazon is helping to kind of like play the role as an intermediary and are purchasing the books for selling it to different people, right? So Amazon has better ways of collecting information about where the demand is, right? So they have customers who are coming in and searching for different books in their on their site, and so they can use this information to think about, okay, what are the books that they would more like to acquire, right? So this is basically the initial idea why it did it, right? Of course, later on, along with their dealer business, they started operating a platform where they not only were selling books to customers, but they were also acting as a platform where you had third-party sellers who could trade with Amazon customers, right? And that is eventually what led to the rise of their business as platforms. And that is, in fact, the role in which people see Amazon in India, right? Where they are not actually direct sellers, but they are actually acting as platforms, right? So that's also a very interesting kind of like a story where you have a lot of legal angles to what Amazon can and cannot do in different markets in different parts of the world, right? Okay. Finally, one thing to note in this context is to link it to our discussion to in network effects. You've also seen this, like, not only when we think about platforms, we should actually more correct term is two-sided platforms, right? So what are the two-sided platforms? So these are basically, you have got platforms and you have got two groups of agents who are basically interacting through this platform, right? What is true about these groups of agents? So essentially, they prefer to have a larger pool of trading partners, right? So this is in some ways an example of indirect network effects, right? Where basically agents in one group are better off, not when the number of agents on their side of the group is increasing, but on the other side of the platform is increasing. So just to give you an example, what are examples of two-sided platforms? So one example is credit cards payment systems, right? So here, credit card issuing authority, banks, and all these things, these are the platform. And on one side, you have got the sellers, the shopkeepers and others who are selling some products, right, and are allowing credit card payments to be made. And on the other side, you have got customers who are interested in buying products, right, and are using credit cards to perhaps pay for such products, right? So the platform is, think of the credit card as the platform, customers and the sellers are the two sides, right? Now, from the seller's perspective, it would really benefit if a particular credit card is being used by a lot of customers, right? So they want to kind of like have access to these customers, more number of customers who are using these credit cards, the more the sellers would be happy to accept such credit cards, right? So that would be an example. Operating systems also. So operating systems are the platform. You have got the customers who are one side, and you have got the developers of various softwares, apps, games on the other side, right? So again, what the developers would want is that there are a lot more customers on the particular operating system, right, or the platform. And what the customers would want is that there are a lot more developers on that particular platform, right? So if you are thinking of deciding upon various platforms, this is what the decision would be. Similarly, for video game consoles, so think about Xbox or PlayStation. So again, the two sides are the developers of the games versus the customers who are playing the games, right? So customers would prefer to buy the console on which you have a lot more games, right? And the game developers would prefer to design a game for a console where you have a lot of customers, right? So again, this, you see this indirect network effects and this two-sided platforms, right? Shopping malls are an example which predates the digital era. So these are also interestingly examples of two-sided platform. So again, the shopping mall is the platform, and on one side you have the customers, and on the other side you have the shops which are setting up in the shopping malls, right? So shops would prefer to set up in shopping malls where you have a lot of customers coming, right? And customers would also prefer to go to those shopping malls where you have a lot of shops actually available, right? So again, customers, they don't really care about how many other customers are coming, right? But they care about how many other shops are there, and the shops, they don't care about other shops being here directly, right? But they care about the number of customers who are visiting those things, right? So these are some examples, and a lot of interesting issues come up in such markets, right, where we can use the tools that we have developed so far in this game theory course overall, and also in the other courses in economics you might have taken. So for example, one interesting question, let's say with regard to the credit card system, is that who should actually pay for the services that are being generated by the credit card companies, right? Should it be customers, or should it be basically the shops which are allowing transactions through credit cards, right? Because it takes money to run this credit card service, right? So who should be charged what, right? Should we charge the customers more, or should you charge the shopkeepers more? Now, the interesting thing is, in my experience, in different countries, you end up with different systems, right? So in some countries, you end up with basically kind of like shopkeepers being charged more, and credit cards are actually available for free. In other countries, you have a system where even though right when you are making the transaction, there are no credit card charges for a particular transaction, but you still might have to pay a credit card fee, right? So you have like all these interesting cases about thinking about what should be the different pricing scheme that should be adopted there. And in order to answer those sort of questions, you require a combination of tools from this network effects that we have been talking about, uh, thinking about how to profit maximize elasticities. All these concepts kind of like become relevant, and there are like a lot of very interesting insights. So the two references that we used this week are again our old reference, the networks rather than markets. So chapter 17 can be seen as a basic introduction to this network effects, right? But if you want a more detailed look, the second reference is particularly helpful, which we have also used in some parts of this lecture this week, which is this book called Industrial Organization, Markets and Strategies by Paul Belaflemme and Martin Bates, right? So there are some of these issues that we talked about, the two-sided platforms and all these things. They go into much more detail, and you can see how game theory is applied in thinking about these issues in more detail, in more examples.